Enchash Lekaut, Ulkan, Statlium Kan, Uchamilch, Shamachquachich, Tanina Williams. I will be reading this document called Colonize First, a liberating guide and workbook for peeling back the layers of neo-colonialism, and it was written by Michelle Lorna Nahaney, Tantalia. I love this document. Move beyond neo-colonial denial and admit there are problems. Decolonize First calls to action, a process of peeling back the layers of denial we've all been taught to normalize. While colonialism refers to a domination over peoples and dispossession from their territories, neo-colonialism refers to ongoing political, cultural, and economic oppression. So neo-colonial denial would mean denying that control over Indigenous peoples continues and denying that non-Indigenous peoples benefit from those systems. Moving beyond neo-colonial denial includes not saying things like colonialism happened a long time ago. It has nothing to do with me. I didn't have any control over what my ancestors said or did, or completely ignoring inequity and injustice because you are comfortable. Decolonizing how we see and what we believe is needed before we can self-actualize within the settler colonialism of Canada. And then there's read more about settler colonialism here. And I'll just open that document actually so that let's allow, because I think it's important that we do that. So this document is called Imagining a Better Future, and Introduction to Teaching and Learning about Settler Colonialism in Canada. Oh, I really loved reading this article. I just need to make things bigger so that I'm not squinting at the screen. And so this was written in February 20th, 2018 by Andrea Ettinger and co-authored with Sarah York Bertram. Note from Andrea: Sarah York Bertram has been setting social media on fire with her wonderful Twitter essays on the subject. So of course I had to ask her if she would be willing to co-author this post with me, and she is so kind that she said yes. Thank you, Sarah. If you come here to help me, you're wasting your time. If you come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. A quote by Lilla Watson. We wish to acknowledge that this blog post would not have been possible without the work of Indigenous scholars, many of whom are listed below, who have been researching and writing in this field for decades. We are deeply indebted to them for their generosity and patience. Like so many others, both Sarah and Andrea have been appalled, angered, and outraged by the Stanley decision, as well as the way in which so many people are in denial about anti-Indigenous racism in this country. While we are heartened to see all the great discussions online, we are alarmed to see that many individuals do not know or understand how settler colonialism has shaped the history and present of this place we now call Canada. As settlers, scholars, and historians, we believe that it is our responsibility to help rectify this situation. We also believe that we need to keep these conversations going beyond the Stanley decision, and that they should be an integral part of the teaching and learning of history in this country. Further, we believe that it is important that we continually and actively fight against racism in all its forms. Anti-racism is an active approach to unpacking, accounting for, and dismantling this systemic racism. It's not about simply abstaining from being racist. It is about doing what's necessary to build an equitable, decolonial culture and society that all humans can thrive in. What follows are guidelines, resources, frequently asked questions that are informed by anti-racist and decolonial approaches to teaching about settler colonialism in Canada. This blog post is targeted specifically towards educators who want to increase their knowledge of the subject as well as integrate it into their teaching practice. However, it is our hope that this guide will also be of use to any individuals is interested in helping to imagine a better future for us. A quick word on the meaning of the term settler. A lot of people in Canada take offense to being called settlers, even though the term is not derogatory. Being a settler means that you are non-Indigenous and that you or your ancestors came and settled in a land that had been inhabited by Indigenous people. Think Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, etc. However, it is important to recognize that while the term is not derogatory, it can often be very difficult to hear. Many people, particularly when first learned about the subject of settler colonialism, have strong and negative reactions to it. Andrea recalls yelling at the person who first called her a settler. Thankfully, Emma forgave me, and Sarah recalls feeling like the rug had been ripped out from under her. Most of us like to think that we are good people, and being told that we're complicit in a colonial project can be emotionally wrenching. So we would like to encourage those who are interested in learning about this subject to make space for their feelings, recognizing them without judgment, and, whenever possible, to extend the same consideration to others. This is not to suggest that racism behavior is acceptable under circumstances, but rather that each person is on their own journey. We embrace a philosophy of love as political resistance. Whenever possible, however, part of this radical love is being opened to learning and growing even when it is painful. What is settler colonialism? Simply put, settler colonialism is a term that is used to describe the history and ongoing process structures whereby one group of people, settlers, are brought in to replace an existing Indigenous population, usually as part of imperial projects. Settler colonialism can be distinguished from other forms of colonialism by the following characteristics. Settlers intend to permanently occupy and assert their sovereignty over Indigenous lands. This invasion of structural rather than a single event, designed to ensure the elimination of indigenous populations and control of their lands through the imposition of a new governmental legal system. The goal of settler colonialism is to eliminate colonial differences by eliminating indigenous peoples, thereby establishing settler right to the indigenous lands. Though often assuming to be a historical process, settler colonialism as a project is always partial, unfinished, and in progress. Examples include Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and Africa. Colonization, settlement, and the creation of nation states like ones mentioned above depend upon particular historical narratives that enforce or justify settler occupation of indigenous lands. These narratives seek to reinforce the idea that these lands belong to settlers and the settlers belong on the land. Therefore, the rewriting of history is a key part of settler colonialism. This often rests on an artificial temporal division that divides a location's history into two distinct periods, before and after settlement. Central to the before time is the idea that the land is in question were either empty or not being used, referred to as the doctrine of discovery, terra nullius, literary empty lands 1. Chelsea Wool, Indigenous Rights, A Guide to First Nations, Métis, Inuit Issues in Canada. Newburyport, Portage and Main Press, 2017, Chapter 26, and Henry Provocation, Anti-Asian Exclusion, and the Making and Unmaking of White Supremacy in Canada. In Dominions of Race, Rethinking Canada's International History, eds. Murray. A lot of names that I'm not going to mention because I can't see them all. A Brief History of Settler Colonialism in Canada. I'm going to end there for this video because I can only record 15-minute segments and we're pretty close and I don't know how much. Yeah, there's a lot more to go here. Let's see.